In the winter of 1964, Nelson Mandela arrived on Robben Island, where he would spend 18 of his 27 prison years. It is more than 2 decades since Nelson Mandela left Robben Island and 3 years since he died. But the markings on the wall that act as a welcome to the island with words inscribed, "Freedom cannot be manacled," remind any guests to the island that freedom must be achieved through a struggle. Through the prison's main gate, you are led into the interior of the prison, and while everything else is good to look at, what catches everyone's curiosity is the cell that kept the world's most famous freedom fighter, Nelson Mandela. Through the various group cells, an approach to an open quadrangle is made.
This section, because they didn't have enough space like in the group cell sections, so on Saturdays they played mostly tennis. So this is a tennis court.
At the extreme end of the quadrangle wall is a small place with flowers. It is the place where the book, Long Walk to Freedom, had its birth.
That part along the wall, that used to be Mr. Mandela's garden. Mr. Mandela started writing his book, Long Walk to Freedom, while he was in prison. But because the authorities would come at any time of the day and night to come and search the cells, so Mr. Mandela didn't want to take the risk of keeping the manuscripts in his cell, so he used to hide them in his garden.
Part of Mandela's scripts were smuggled out by one of the fellow prisoners, Mark Maharaj, on his release, while at the quadrangle by the wall side of the prison are various windows. We are told the 4th window from the extreme left housed Mandela's cell, and indeed, entry to the door on the 4th right-hand side is Nelson Mandela's cell.
For 18 years of his prison sentence life, Nelson Mandela lived here all by himself, simply because he was a leader. That is why he was incarcerated in a single cell.
The cell has no bed, but houses several items that were used by Nelson Mandela.
When I came here in 1977, there were no beds here in prison. So each prisoner was given 2 mats like those and 3 blankets.
Mandela slept on this mat, laid on the floor for 14 years before beds were introduced, and used the beds for only 4 years before he was transferred from Robben Island prison. Also in the room is a metallic plate and cup that were used by Mandela, plus a bucket that was used as a toilet at night. Every morning, he and other prisoners in the single cells would empty their buckets and clean them for the use in the later night. All the prisoners were identified through a clear card indicating the name of prisoner, his number and date of arrival, reason for detention, date of incarceration and release date, and the number 46664 for Nelson Mandela only indicated that Nelson Mandela was the 466th prisoner to arrive on Robben Island in the year 1964, not necessarily his prison number as many believe. Just like any other prisoners, Nelson Mandela followed a tight prison schedule.
We had breakfast at 7, we had lunch at 11, we had supper at 4, and then 4 o'clock we're locked up for the day.
The prison cells were opened at 7 for breakfast, after which Mandela and the other leaders were taken to work in the lime quarry.
All prisoners sentenced to the island would have been sentenced to do hard labor. And hard labor took place in various forms. From the prison experience, you would have learned that leaders were kept separate from the other prisoners. They never wanted the leaders to influence the other prisoners. And it was the leaders that worked inside the limestone quarry with the shovels and the pickaxes. The lime would have been excavated for the construction of the roads on the island. So it was in that space where Nelson Mandela, Ahmed Kathrada, Walter Sisulu, Gambeki, and those type of prisoners sort of worked.
Because of this hard labor, a special meal was provided to energize them.
Phuza mandla is powdered form. You mix it with water and then you drink it. I don't know the ingredients of Phuza mandla, but we were told it was energy drink and we're not sure about that.
The drinking water was provided on a daily basis. The bathing water had to be the cold Atlantic seawater in a cold island. Warm water was only introduced in the 1970s. So clearly, the times of Nelson Mandela's arrival at the prison were void of most of the privileges. and to all, including Mandela, there was never a thought of escaping from the prison.
We never discussed about escaping because we never thought about that. Yeah. The reason for that was we didn't want to give the authorities the reason for killing us, because if one was seen escaping, that person will be shot by the authorities. So that's why we never discussed the case of escaping.
In 1982, Mandela was transferred to Pollsmoor Prison in Cape Town from Robben Island Prison, and in 1988, he was then transferred to Victor Verster Prison in Paarl, about 60 kilometers from Cape Town, where he was later released in 1990.
If needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
Robben Island became the crucible which transformed him. No wonder Mandela's prison cell has attracted several notables, including celebrities and presidents of several countries. Through his intelligence, charm, and dignified defiance, Mandela eventually bent even the most brutal prison officials to his will, assumed leadership over his jailed comrades, and became the master of his own prison. He emerged from it the mature leader who would fight and win the great political battles that would create a new democratic South Africa. For NBS Focus on South Africa, I'm Mildred Tohaise, NBS Live at 9.